the more years of education they will be able to get. Kind of makes sense when you think about it, because if a person has means, right, support of a family or something like that, maybe they're independently wealthy, they can afford to stay in school longer. So, but in this example, again, it switches around the DV and the IV. So the DV would be years of education, and the IV would be income. I want to spend just a second talking about the deductive and inductive cycle. So deductive and inductive cycle generally is talking about the relationship between data and conclusions. So I'm sorry, I said data and conclusions, and what I meant was data and theory. So typically in inductive research, we begin with data and then we develop a theory that sort of explains that data. The counterweight to that is really deductive research, which is simply the opposite. In deductive research, we start with a theory and we look for data that we can use to test that theory. So on this chart here, we can see that we've sort of organized theory, hypotheses, data, and empirical generalizations around sort of around a circle. So we put theory at the top, we've put hypotheses sort of at the right-hand side of the circle, we put data down at the bottom, and then empirical generalizations on the left-hand side of the circle. And if we think about this going kind of clockwise, when we go from theory to data, when we start with theory and we look for data with which we're going to test that theory, that's deductive research. That's typically a quantitative process. When we start at data on the bottom of that circle, and we compose a theory using empirical generalizations, but when we compose a theory to sort of account for that data, that's qualitative research. That's simply the inductive process right there. Now, I said, I think last week in the lecture, we spend a lot of time talking about quantitative research in this class. We actually will spend more time talking about quantitative research than we will qualitative research. And so again, in the quantitative process, we're sort of starting at the top of the circle. We're starting with theory. We're developing hypotheses to test that theory, and we're looking for data that we're using to test the theory, and we'll be able to say that our hypotheses are either supported or not supported. So that's simply the deductive and inductive cycle. Keep in mind something like this might be on, or some version of this, or maybe the relationship of deductive and inductive to qualitative and quantitative might make its way onto one of the exams in class. I want to conclude just talking a little bit about similarities between research process and practice. Research is really a process of discovery. It's really about answering questions. And in a lot of ways, practice is the same way. We typically have a question, right? We ask our clients questions, quite honestly, but we're working towards a goal. We're working towards solving a problem, and really we're doing the same thing in research as well. We're trying to solve a problem. We might do it slower, and our results might not be quite as visible, because it takes such a long time to do research. But really those processes are the same. So I'm going to conclude there. Thanks for watching.